Well, howdy, product data professionals. We're back for another episode of IDA Optimized. Today, we're going to talk about category cross-listing, also known as polyhierarchy. That's a tongue twister. With us, as always, is Eli Cooley. He'll take us on a tour through SKUDB, an application we use to design taxonomies and schemas. Take it away, Eli.
Thanks, Joe. Polyhierarchy is a fancy word for a category living more than one place in a hierarchy. Another word that we sometimes hear used is cross-listing. Might be a slightly less technical term, but don't be scared by the word polyhierarchy. It just means a hierarchy where a category can live in more than one place. And we're going to look at a couple examples right now. It's a big part of, well, in some hierarchies, it's a big part of the design, and we'll take a look at that. We're going to start by looking at SKUs.com, and this is a hierarchy that our team at Industrial Data Associates builds as a demonstration site and as a place to test out ideas and concepts and to just practice designing taxonomies. And one of the elements of SKUs.com is that it has a polyhierarchy. And I'll show you an example. So if I go under adhesives here and I look at tapes, I will see here that I have a category called drywall tape. That's right here. Now, I can actually find drywall tape more than one place. So somebody might be looking in the adhesives and then tapes, and they might find it that way. If I go back to the home page, I'm going to go a different way. I'm going to go down building supplies, and from building supplies, I'm going to look at drywall, and drywall. I'm going to look at drywall and actually drywall tools, and then within drywall tools, I have compound tools. I'm way down in the hierarchy here. And here's drywall tape again. So someone's is looking for compound tools in the context of drywall tools. And here we've cross-listed drywall tape. They'll find it here as well. So that's just one example. And what this allows us to do is oftentimes there's a primary home for these categories. So drywall tape, its primary home, I think, is actually here in building supplies, and then it's cross-listed or polyhierarchied or whatever you want to call it over to the adhesives category as well under tapes. I'm going to toggle over to the back end of this hierarchy. So we're going to look at the data management environment where we maintain this hierarchy, and it's a slightly different look, but these are the same categories. And you can see here this blue X next to drywall tape. That means that it's a cross list. So I'm in the adhesive section, and then I go into tapes, and there's drywall tape. And its primary home is over here in building supplies. So this is a way you can see here that I can manage this category under building supplies. That's its primary home. And then I can cross-list it or use polyhierarchy to design this category so that it shows up under the tapes L2 as well. Now, this is very useful because I don't have to, there's a different paradigm for e-commerce taxonomies, which is some taxonomies don't have polyhierarchy. They have what we call multi-classification. So this is a little bit of a generalization, but one approach that is often used is this cross-listing or polyhierarchy. Another way we might do the same thing, and some environments require us to classify SKUs in more than one place, even if they have the same name. So we would just have another drywall tape category here with a different ID, and we might classify different items to it. So those are two very important concepts in the design of hierarchies. It's multi-classification and polyhierarchy. And sometimes you have both going on. Sometimes you have one or the other. That's very often the case. And sometimes you don't have either. So it really depends on the hierarchy that you're working with. Most e-commerce hierarchies that we see today, though, do have some notion of polyhierarchy. Now let's just take another look. One more example here. I'm going to go to the electronics category, and we can see here that sometimes there's more than one. So under electronics, I have electrical supplies being cross-listed, and I have video games. So it's reasonable that somebody would find video games and would expect to find electrical supplies under electronics, even though that's not their primary home. If I go over to the electrical category, which is very similar to electronics but different, I can see I've cross-listed electronics over here. So I'm actually taking an L1, a sibling of electrical, and I'm cross-listing it underneath electrical, because some people are going to click on electrical looking for electronics. And that's, we've got to calculate and think about how many people actually would expect to find electronics here. And that's where we're looking at clickstream data and other web analytics to understand how people think. And we might be doing tree testing and having users go through and try to find things to see where they expect to find electronics and so on. But there's a lot of work that goes into identifying where cross lists should be used and where they shouldn't be used. It's a big part of the design process, and it's one of those things that people using a website don't always realize is happening behind the scenes, but it's a real important element for findability. And there's a lot more to say about some of the analytics behind cross-listing and what goes into evaluating cross-lists, but we're going to leave it here for today and just kind of stand here with the concept of a cross-list or polyhierarchy.
Thanks, Eli, for that demonstration and context around polyhierarchy. It seems in my past, the rule of thumb was always to have a product or a SKU live in one place and one place only. Does polyhierarchy break that rule? If so, what are the downsides to it?
Yeah, polyhierarchy is a great question. Polyhierarchy is very much a design concept that's related to, I would say, e-commerce or web hierarchies, where people are searching for things and navigating. When you talk about what we would call a back-end hierarchy or a data management or an attribute management hierarchy, sometimes people would call this the PIM hierarchy or the master attribution hierarchy. There's typically a hierarchy that stands behind this or upstream from here, where a SKU really does live in one and only one place. So it might be a little bit, it might be a completely different hierarchy that maps into this hierarchy. Sometimes it's almost the same hierarchy with some very small differences, but there usually is a hierarchy that sits somewhere upstream from here where a SKU lives in one and only one place. And that would, but that would typically not be a web hierarchy.
Great stuff. All the more reason to have a well-intentioned design that goes into your product data. Thanks again, Eli. That concludes today's episode of IDA Optimize. Remember to like, share, and comment, and we'll see you on the next session.
Thanks, Joe.